Ghanaians are already preparing for elections that will be held on December 7th of 2024 to elect the president and members of parliament. Ghana's Vice President Mahamudu Bawumia will be the flag bearer for the ruling New Patriotic Party. He will be running against Ghana's main opposition leader and former President John Dramani Mahama of the National Democratic Congress. Analysts say that the country is currently facing its most severe economic crisis in a generation, marked by unprecedented levels of inflation over the past 2 years. Business reporter Paa Kwesi Asare tells me that as the election season approaches, Ghanaians are raising questions about the causes and potential solutions that will restore stability and growth to what used to be one of Africa's most prominent economies. Paa Kwesi Asare, thank you so much for joining us. Or as we say, Akwaba.
Medase.
How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Yeah, good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you
So
too.
what are you doing in Washington, D.C.? You had come for the World Bank, IMF meetings. How did that go?
It went pretty well. The spring meetings of the World Bank and the IMF. So I've been here since last week, following up on the meetings. Of course, we've had our own representatives here, led by the finance minister, the governor of the central bank, and then also there were representatives from civil society groups. And so, yeah.
What is Ghana looking for in, what were they looking for in these meetings? What are some of the things they were asking the World Bank and the IMF?
Well, of course, I mean, this is an annual meeting. We've got the annual meetings and the spring meetings, which take place every year. And I'm sure you know that Ghana is in a 3-year program with International Monetary Fund seeking for a bailout support program. We've already received 2 tranches already, and we're currently waiting to get a 3rd tranche of about $360 million. But of course, I mean, last year we had gone through an unprecedented period in our history. For the very first time, there was a domestic debt exchange program. Following from that, we've had to restructure our external debts, which meant that there had to be meetings with our bilateral creditors, you know, as well as private creditors. And so that discussion is currently ongoing.
Now, Ghana, one of the strongest economies at some point in Africa, I think second in West Africa. How did you find yourselves in this space 2 years ago when I was there? Everybody was saying they feel like they're in some kind of recession. What happened?
It's amazing.
As a business reporter, well, give us some insights.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And a lot of people, I mean, had said that Ghana was a shining star, would look like a shining star. The government has, you know, attributed the current economic decline to the Russia-Ukraine war, to the COVID crisis, which you know, led to restrictions in, you know, exports, imports, trade lines and all that. But of course, I mean, back home, there's that argument about, you know, the fact that the government in itself, they don't manage things well. I mean, there had been that penchant after this new government took over to borrow a lot from the international capital markets. And over the period, we borrowed in excess of $13 billion from the international capital market. And
so where's that $13 billion? What did it do?
That's the multi-million-dollar question that's on the lips of everyone, you know. And so for most people to just attribute the current economic crisis to Russia-Ukraine war and to the COVID crisis, I mean, there were other African countries that were hit by COVID crisis. Not every African country is going to the World Bank and the IMF. So I mean, I think it's a mixture of a lot of things, but it's sad, the kind of situation we're in at the moment.
Is it mismanagement, poor management? Is it malfeasance? Is it corruption?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, we borrowed over $13 billion over the period, and what is it to say for? You would imagine that a lot of these monies will go into you know, generating projects that will pay for itself, you know. And so if you're investing these monies well in areas that will generate some income and funds, then you shouldn't be where you are today.
Absolutely.
You know, the situation was so bad. Our external reserves at the Bank of Ghana, our reserves had dwindled so much so that we're not even able to, you know, pay some of our debts, you know. And so the situation had become so terrible that we had to go to the IMF. And even the process by which the government had to eventually admit that it was such a bad state was fueled with a lot of drama.
Right.
Because
I feel like the government did not want to accept that
they
there were
didn't want to accept
issues.
that we were in an economic crisis.
Right.
But it was clear, everybody could see that there was an economic crisis, and so eventually we had been shut out of the international capital market, which meant that we couldn't borrow. Again, our reserves were almost dwindled. There were expenditures that government had to meet, and there were a lot of liabilities also. And so we had to eventually admit that, look, this was such a terrible state, and we had to get some bailout from the
How
IMF.
is this being reflected in the population locally? How are people feeling this pain? Is it higher prices? Consumer goods more expensive? What are some of the, as a business reporter, what are people telling you?
On the macro level, government would tell you that things are getting better. Of course, inflation 2 years back had hit about 58%, and today inflation is almost a little under 30% or so. So you could see that things are getting better. Interest rate, for instance, are going down, but not to the extent that you would wish. I mean, ordinarily, people are still feeling the pinch because government, for instance, the fact that government has been priced out of the international capital market means that government has had to resort to domestic borrowing on the treasury market, which is more expensive, and it's crowding out the private sector. You see what I mean? So interest rates are really high. Government is continuously borrowing. Private companies would have to borrow at an even higher cost, and they would have to pass on these costs to the consumers. And so on the surface, on the macro level, the numbers look good, but it's not reflecting on the ground because
it's not filtering.
No, because we're having fuel prices go up. Prices of goods and services continuously are shooting up. Currently we are going through an erratic power supply, and you could feel the sense of frustration amongst the youth, and that's why we've had to see hundreds, if not thousands of youth, migrate, to the Americas, to Canada, to UK, and seek for greener pastures.
So you have elections in December coming up. How much will the economics, how will the economy play on the minds of the voters and the politicians? Is that something that they're talking about more than anything else?
I think the economy has always been key in determining any election. Most opposition parties would rely on the economic conditions to make a case against the government. I mean, that's what the current government, the incumbent, who's currently being led by the vice president, who was once a deputy governor of the Bank of Ghana. He was very, very vocal when it had to do with issues of the economy back then.
When he was running.
When he was running, hoping to come into power. He was very, very clear about the depreciation of the local currency against the US dollar. Today, we're seeing that same depreciation. The US dollar to the cedi is almost hit about 14%. Massive depreciation we're seeing. Prices of goods and services have skyrocketed. Joblessness among the youth, a lot of despondency. And so, I mean, you ask yourself, what has been the major difference since he came into power? They came in to do a banking reform, which led to a certain, there was some crisis in the banking industry. They had come in saying they were going to reform the crisis, which led to lots of jobs being lost by people. And so I can tell you for a fact that a lot of people, I mean, when you go to social media where people are talking, they're saying that, look, things are even worse than when they took office.
Right.
And so the economy will be a major determinant in this year's election.
The irony is that he will be running against the same individuals
he was running against the former president, John Dramani Mahama, who transitioned from being a vice president to becoming president. He was president for 4 years, hoping to do another 4 years. Unfortunately, things were so bad during his time. There was doomsaw crisis. You know what the doomsaw is? Electricity crisis, which had gone on for a period of 3 years. Thankfully, that situation normalized. It got better before he left power, which was used against him by this current government. And currently, what we're seeing is a return of that power crisis. It's almost like
it's cyclical.
I mean, this IMF situation we're talking about, I mean, when you look from 2000 till now, under the fourth Republican Constitution, what we've seen is that it's like almost every 4 years or 8 years, a government has to go to the International Monetary Fund for bailout support. You don't understand.
Absolutely.
You know?
So it's possible that even this bailout that they're talking about in the next 4 years
it's absolutely possible. It's absolutely possible. You know,
hopefully not. Which the thing really that I don't understand is that Ghana is a very well-endowed country, very rich. You know, it's not called the Gold Coast for nothing. You know, you have access to the sea, culturally,
rich mineral resources.
Yes,
even now, we're talking about exploring lithium.
What I think about the Ghanaian economy, Ghanaian importing rice, something like rice, sugar, even toothpick is something it's killing our economy. What I think the government can do, one is looking at the dollar to the Ghana cedi, and I think the government is initiating something like the gold for oil thing, and I think that is going to help the Ghana cedi very, very much. So it's a good initiative, and I'm particular about import and export, things that we import into the country, which we can build factories in the country and produce them. Something like rice, something like sugar.
The economy is really bad. Things are expensive, like transportation fees. We can't even afford food. The government should stop building the cathedral and use that money to build the one district, one factory. Because even now, there are so many nurses that they have not been posted. Things are really expensive in this country, so the cathedral should be cancelled and he use that money to build the one district, one factory, so that the unemployment will be employed.
The economy is actually not treating us well, not really treating us good, affecting business here and there. You know, clients complaining of high cost of materials and work and everything. It's really too bad. The government should look at the private sector, I think, because we have the majority, those who are working for ourselves, the entrepreneurs and everything. They should invest more and stop too much borrowing.
Ghana's economy, the Akufo-Addo government has really failed Ghanaians. This time around, the economy, it's in a big mess because we can't even pay our utility bills. Our rents are high. We can't even feed our children, and it's disturbing. Recently, school reopened, and we can't even afford to pay the school fees because prices of the fees have really been increased. What I think the government should do is that they should have control over prices, especially they should go to the marketplaces. They should put in policies that will control our prices in the market, because people are really overpricing goods in the marketplaces, and I think some policies should be in place so that these goods would be checked.
One of the richest countries really on the continent in terms of untapped resources. What are some of the, I guess, the low-hanging fruit that you would say the next administration should be looking at in terms of kind of activating the economy, so that you avoid another 4 years of coming back to the IMF asking for handouts?
I think that agriculture is key. Over 50% of the population, have relied on, agriculture. But there's a need to improve on this agriculture, agribusiness, a lot more improved methods of agriculture, because that's where the majority of the population feed on. That's food. If we're able to produce what we eat and not necessarily have to import all those things to the country, that's going to be major, and a lot of these foods that we even import, you need foreign exchange, to bring in these products. So
you can grow locally.
We can grow locally.
Absolutely.
The vice president, who's currently on the ticket of the incumbent, that's the New Patriotic Party, is talking a lot about digitization, which is also key today. There's a lot of job that can be created through the digital age. There's so much going on today with the mobile phone. There's so much going on today with technology, and of course that's an area where the youth can also leverage on. So I think that
I think one area that I think most people don't talk about is the culture. One of the richest cultures on the continent, and plus tourism. In the last couple of years,
Yeah.
we've seen with these initiatives like the Year of the
Afrochella,
Return, Afrochella.
Right.
There's so much attention on Ghana right now. It's surprising that you're going through a period of economic turmoil at the time when there's global attention, especially from the West, turned to Ghana.
That's true.
I mean, you know what I'm saying?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
But again, one of the youngest countries, youth population, I think over 70% are under the age of 21, as reflected, as it is across the continent. How critical is the youth vote, and how is it being quoted that any of these candidates actually speaking the language that young people want to hear in terms of, promising jobs, employment rates are, obviously really high when a country is suffering economically. You know that the people that are being affected mostly are the young people, the youth coming out of college, and you can't find a job. What are they saying to quote that very critical demographic?
I think that it's the issue of unemployment is major. It's major on the lips of a lot of the youth, because what we're doing is that we're churning out a lot of unemployed graduates. We're seeing a lot of universities spring up, especially private universities spring up in the last 10 years, and it's adding to the numbers of unemployed youth we're seeing today. Unfortunately, we're not seeing jobs increase with the increase in graduates' unemployment, and so it's creating a major difficulty. I think about 4 or 5 years back, we even had an unemployed graduate association, who were
unemployed graduate association,
who were out there picketing, So it's a major issue, because it's also a national security crisis. The youth out there who need jobs and are not finding the jobs, will become a threat to the middle class, someday.
Absolutely.
I mean, as for the politicians, they've got the opportunity to have security guards and all that, and bodyguards around them. But the middle class, who's just driving his car, in the street. So it's a major issue that I really hope that the politicians, be the NPP or the NDC, will pay particular attention to. How do we solve this problem? I think also that there's some level of despondency among the middle class today. They think that the two major parties, the NPP and the NDC, are almost like two sides of the same coin, and there is a clamor for change. Unfortunately, we're not really seeing
a third party, like the Peter Obi situation in Nigeria.
Right. We just recently seen Alan Tremantin, who used to be the former trade minister, come out of the New Patriotic Party, the incumbent party, and said, listen, he's going to go independent, and he's formed his new party. And we're trying to, already we're seeing a certain coalition, coming out of that. It's not certain yet.
The smaller parties?
Not really the smaller parties, but, there's some
just
sort of
the voices,
aggregation that we're seeing from interest groups, and I don't know how much, of impact they can make, but it is clear that a lot of people think that these two major political parties have not really lived up to the billing.
Right.
Yes.
If I come in December in Ghana, aside from covering the election, what are some of the things I should look out for people that, if you're to sell the country right now, listen, come to Ghana. We are much more than a failing economy.
I think you should look out for our food. We've got really good food.
Yeah.
Our culture is amazing. You talk about our culture, and just let me know when you come. I will personally treat you to some wachi and some tozafi and some banku and okra soup.
You cannot fail with the food in Ghana.
I won't fail you. Yes, it's really good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming through.
Thank you very much.
Brother.